Hello, winners, and welcome to Two for the Win with your hosts, Nick and Will. Have you ever wondered what it's like to travel to London? It's a city that I've been fortunate to frequent quite a bit, as well as my co host has been there several times, and love to tell you more about a recent London experience that I enjoyed. But before we get into London, be sure to subscribe, share, and follow Two for the Win on your favorite platform. And want to give a shout out to Nick Menard and Associates with Dream Vacations for sponsoring today's episode. Thank you, Nick Menard.
You're very welcome. Hello, winners.
Hello, hello. So, London is one of those cities. It's a very international city. It's huge. I think it's bigger than New York in terms of population. It certainly seems like it. Obviously, central London is very packed, but London is also very spread out. There's a lot to it, including the countryside. But high thoughts about London before I jump into my recent trip there.
Yeah, so just last time I went to London, I was in my early 20s. So I went multi times when I was, like between 18 and 25. That was a fun trip to do, party in London. It's always fun. We have there is a train, Eurostar, but no, I think they renamed it, who goes from London to Paris and go to Brussels after that. So it's a very easy trip to make. And I used to go there a lot for partying and for sport because, when you live in Europe, the one sport and the only sport that everybody are watching is soccer, football. And so the real football, I know I will offend some people here, but it's the case. And I love to go there and to actually watch those games, and the fans or the hooligans, like they are well known in England. That's a fun trip to make, and beautiful. The best team in soccer, pretty much, with Spain are in England. So yeah, a long time ago. So I will defer to you a lot because you told me earlier that there are a lot of things who change. Like a Big Ben is something that I remember was a great monument to visit, but you said that a lot of things change as well recently. So I'm looking forward to hear all the new things. But advantage for us to go to England. First of all, it's an easy flight from Miami or from New York or from Washington D.C., Atlanta. Those are the direct flight to London. It's like 6 hours, probably something like that. So it's not that far. It's a little bit more than Vegas, barely. And they speak the same language. So that's another big advantage when you want to travel, but you want to be able to speak your language with everybody. Well, that's England is a good option, and London, of course. I know it's very rural, so meaning that you cannot go with the car downtown. It's made for people to take the subway and just walk around the city. But yeah, I will pass the ball to you to explain your own experience as an American.
Yeah, it is. You're right. They speak the same language, but some of those words are quite different. So, for example, they don't call it an elevator, they call it a lift. They don't call it a trunk of the car, they call it a boot. So there's just some different things you have to, for the first time I went to London, which was probably 2017, struck me, because it's very different. But I've probably been to London now, gosh, it's 8 years. So I would say at least 10 times, if not more, since 2017. One of my favorite cities to visit. Unlike Barcelona, which is a really fun city for me to visit, and I actually would consider living there just for a variety of reasons. I wouldn't consider necessarily living in London, but to visit is fascinating. And I've been very fortunate. London gets a bad rap about their weather, in my opinion. I mean, I've been there at least 10 times. It might have been more. It might be 12. Only once did I have really poor weather. And this last trip that I went on in May, I went for a week, and it wasn't until the last day where it was poor weather, but the weather before was gorgeous. So it was basically like in the low 70s. Yeah. I mean, they don't have a lot of sunshine. And I think that's the thing, especially if you're used to Florida. We have, well over 250 days of sun in a year. London's got a little bit of that Seattle vibe in terms of a lot of clouds and things like that. But I've been fortunate when I've gone. The weather has been nice, and even when I've gone in the winter, yeah, it gets cold, but there's something about seeing London in the winter, give
Mm,
you a little bit of a Christmas story feeling like what Ebenezer Scrooge and Bob Cratchit, but seeing like the window displays with Harrods, which is
mhm.
a place that I always stop and go to when I go to London's, go to Harrods, even if you're a male who doesn't really care to shop. It is a phenomenal experience. It's 6 levels, massive building. And besides just like shopping, but the thing that strikes me is you walk in and you're seeing these like 30, 40, 50,000 pound necklaces, pound meaning British pound.
Mhm.
So I don't know, 65, $70,000 necklace. And you literally walk 10 feet and you're in the produce department. It is the most wild thing, the way they have the layout, but they have everything. They have jewelry, they have food, they have clothing, they have electronics, bedding, household, cigars, a beauty parlor. I mean, it's amazing. And the cool thing, in addition to what Harrods does in the Christmas with the windows display, but even during like when I went during May, it's right next to Hyde Park. And Hyde Park, for those who have been to Central Park in New York, kind of a similar vibe. It's a very large park. When it's sunny, people in London are outside. They are not sitting inside. They take advantage of it. They like to walk. You see a bunch of people just sitting in the park. And then from Hyde Park, you're not that far from the Victoria and Albert Museum, which is one of my favorite museums in London. Has a lot of medieval paintings and sculptures and artwork, which is fascinating. And then really, you're not too far to walk to St. James Park. And St. James Park is a little bit smaller, I think, from my perspective. I don't know exactly if it is or not, but it seems a little bit smaller than Hyde Park near Buckingham Palace. And so if you go Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Sunday, I think it is, you can see the changing of the guard, which is kind of cool, and see them all in their little outfits and on the
Oh yeah.
horses and all that. And you're not that far from Kensington Palace either. A little bit, from there, but you see Buckingham Palace, and then you're not that far from Big Ben. And Big Ben, the last few years, they were refurbishing it, kind of like what we did with the Washington Monument recently in D.C. They did the same with Big Ben, and like I told you before we jumped on here, reminded me of being in the square of Belgium. They had, it seemed like they had more gold on Big Ben than I remember on the clock face and everything. But that is just, I mean, London oozes history. In the States, if we say, oh, there's a house built in 1915, we think it's ancient. In London, that's like
Mhm.
yesterday. I mean, they have a pub near the Long Walk in Windsor Castle that's been around since the 1400s. I mean, it's tiny. Like get in it, like you and I mean, especially you because you're taller than me. I mean, that's a tight fit. But I mean, you talk about getting the feel of what it was like in medieval times to hang out at a pub and all the wood. I don't know. I could go on and on about London, but let me pause because I'm on a tangent and
Yeah.
I'll pass it over to you.
Yes, I would like to ask you some question because you said
Sure.
a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So I want to get back into, like you mentioned parks. So of course those are famous that you mentioned. You mentioned Buckingham Palace.
Hmm.
You mentioned the Big Ben. You mentioned Windsor. So you mentioned a lot of different places.
Hmm.
What would you recommend someone who never been to London and wants to experience it? How many days would you recommend for a visitor to visit and have a good feel of what London is all about? I know it's big. That's number one. Number two, what would be the three first thing that you think someone should be going to and visit when they go for the first time in London?
Ooh, great question. I would say if you're staying primarily in London proper, 5 days,
Hmm.
I would try to go 7 and try to get to Windsor as well, but 5 days for sure. The top three things. Oh gosh, that's such a good question. I think depending on the vibe. So if you're somebody who appreciates
Hmm.
architecture, I think definitely seeing Big Ben. I think seeing Buckingham Palace, and I think seeing the monument for Prince Albert. That
Okay.
is really really cool. And those are all within walking distance. You
Right.
don't even need an Uber really, unless you just are somebody who doesn't want to walk that much. Then certainly get an Uber, but then it's that costly. Um, I think if you're into history, I would recommend the British Museum, where you see the Rosetta Stone. They have a lot of mummies that they pillaged from Egypt, including a mummy of Cleopatra. Um, and that is just fascinating for the history. I mean, you're talking about thousands
Mm.
and thousands of year old artifacts. I would also do the Victoria and Albert Museum for what I mentioned earlier. And then the National History Museum, dinosaur bones, all that sort of stuff is really cool. If you're looking for sports, I think, that's the one thing I haven't done yet, but I have to do. I think seeing a soccer game in England would
Mm.
be super cool to do something like that. But if you're passionate about American sports, they do have bars and pubs that show American sports, so you can get them if you want. And then if you're into the Royals, then certainly I would do Buckingham Palace. I would do Windsor, which has the largest castle in Europe, which is just
Mm.
phenomenal. And that tour is amazing. Just know you can't take pictures. They get really mad when you start taking pictures inside the castle because the royals still live there part time. So no picture taking. And then the other thing, I'm going to go a little off script on the other royal one. The first time I went to London, you know how I like to travel in a new city. I just start in a particular area and I walk
Mm-hmm.
around. I came across the Princess Diana Memorial by
Oh.
accident. I didn't seek it out. And I just kind of stumbled across it. And it's done very classy. So it's almost like this little babbling brook. And they have like these little like planters and candle lights type thing, and it's just done really well. And so I know some people who are into the royals, and especially were huge fans of Princess Diana. I would include that as something to view. So I know I didn't give you a top three. I gave you a top three by
No, no, I
category,
like
but
it.
that's because London, there's so much to do and see.
No, I know, and I love that because as a travel agent in travel agency, you have different kind of people who call for different kind of not only destination but what they want to do in those destinations. So I love the diversity of things that you are able to do. So if you are into history, architecture, if you are into modeling and you want to go to those different big malls, if you are, I mean, I know that we like to gamble and we talk a lot about casino and stuff. I know they have like a huge one there as well.
And I won money this last trip. I forgot to tell
No,
you
no, you
that. I
didn't
did
tell
win
me.
a
You
little
look
bit.
at you.
I did a little
So
150 pounds profit, so I'll take it.
absolutely. So for those who are interested in that part, what is the striking difference between the well-known casino here, Hard Rock and Vegas and things like that, MGM, compared to what you see in England? Is it very, very similar or
Very much smaller in London. So the one that I go to downtown is called the Hippodrome. It's 4 levels, including a rooftop, but it's very small
okay?
on that. But for the well, I shouldn't just say ladies. There might be some guys who appreciate it. On the third level of Hippodrome, they do the Thunder from Down Under or Magic Mike type
Oh,
show. So if you're on a girls' trip or if you're on a certain boys' trip and you want to see that could tickle your fancy. But that's actually one of the bigger ones, and it's still small. It is very
all
small.
right, that's good to
But
know.
there's some other ones called Genting and Genting, and they have multiple locations spread across London, and they're basically small casinos with slots and then poker room. And when I first gave you your job offer to come over to my division back in leadership, I called you from the Genting Casino poker room while we're in the middle
Mm.
of a break to tell you the news that somebody had left, and we were able to move you forward. So that one has a fond place in my heart for memories. But
Awesome.
I will say the cool thing about their poker tournaments is they have an intermission in the poker tournament and they serve you food for free. So they put out all these little food, which is kind of nice. It's a
Hmm.
nice little touch. you're not going to see the big casinos like we see in Hollywood, Florida, or certainly in Vegas.
All right, that's good to know. So I mentioned all that I mentioned sport, of course. People who love, oh, soccer, of course, number one. But you have rugby, was very famous.
Hmm.
Cricket was very famous. So you have different things. You have Wimbledon. If people love tennis, it's one of the
Hmm.
four main tournaments in the world. So you have it's on grass. It's the only main tournament on grass. So that's also very popular when you go to London. London. Something that I know, we are foodies, and I know a lot of our listeners are as well.
Mm.
And I know when you come back from London, you always tell me, "Oh my God, I try to stay away from it, but it was so good." So can you tell us a little bit more about the kind of food we can find in London?
Yeah. Now, personal preference. I know I'm going to offend some people, but too bad. Um, I'm not a fan of British food. It's very plain. They don't really season their food. Their fish and chips, I've yet to be odd. I've tried it a couple times. I'm sure I'm just not going to the right place, but their fish and chips is no great shake. One thing to be careful, biscuits are cookies. And pies typically have meat in them. They're not the pies like we think in America, but it's bland. It's bland as shit. I'm just not a fan. But what I love about London
Indian.
is it's an international
Mhm.
city, and so Indian food. I I got this recommended from a coworker of mine a couple years ago, and there's a place called Dishoom. They have a couple locations in downtown or central London. Phenomenal Indian food, just absolutely delicious. Not exotic dishes, but the stuff they make really well. This last time, ooh, I was telling you about this. Check out Bone Daddies. It's a
Mm.
ramen place. They brew their broth for 20 hours and then serve it. It was the most flavorful ramen, and they have all sorts of different kinds of ramen you can get. That was phenomenal. I actually went a second time. It was so good. That's now going to be a staple when I go back is hitting Bone Daddies. And then of course, if you like pizza, or Italian food, well, there's a lot of native Italians who relocate to London, and the pizza is fantastic. And the last thing I'll say is if you're into Mediterranean or Turkish or Middle Eastern food,
Mm.
great selection there. You want falafel, they have a lot of walk up places on that. Of course, they got restaurants that are more formal than that as well. But I love the food in London, but it's not British food. Typically, it's food from other places in the world, but people from those places are the ones making it.
I tend to agree. I remember, from what I remember going when I go to London for those long weekends, it's Indian food. I remember Indian food. Not
Oh,
sure if it's
so good.
the same location, but Indian food, which I love. And it's hard to find really good Indian food. Usually you put spice and it's Indian,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
actually real Indian food is hard to find.
Hmm.
And London definitely hit the mark on Indian food. And then everything was like late at night when you go out, after the game, you go party somewhere, and then it's like 2, 3, 4 a.m. They have those pita durum place every
Hmm.
corners. And I remember having never have a problem to find something to eat, late at night or early in the morning. So I totally agree with you. um, you mentioned, when we talked after your return in May, you mentioned some tours you made, some
Oh,
that
yeah.
were successful, hit the mark, and some who didn't. Can you share with us a little bit the activities that you experienced in London that sticked with you?
Yeah. From this past trip, I did two different things before I actually went for business, but I took a couple of PTO days before. Um, I did a ghost bus tour. It was not good. The guy was trying to make it more of a comedy, and I was expecting something that was going to be a little bit more eerie. And when they did try to pivot to make it a little eerie, the graphics and the video they showed on the TV in the bus, it was a double decker bus, just not very good. So he's like, "Oh, please only leave a good review." And then he's like, "If you think we did a good job, please tip in my hat." As he stood out, nobody tipped. It it really was bad. But the funny thing was the next day I did a walking tour for Jack the Ripper.
Mm-hmm.
That was phenomenal, and the guy, I didn't mention this to you, the guy who led that tour used to work for that Ghost Bus tour a number of years ago, and he said when COVID hit, the owner went a little bit more cost conscious, and they used to have more of a back and forth because they had 2 people doing the tour, not just 1, and he's like, "No, it's not very good." I'm like, "Yeah, it's not." But that Jack the Ripper tour was really, really good. So you get in a group of about 30 people, and you're walking to the spots where the murders occurred, and a lot of those places are completely unchanged. Like again, London
Hmm.
history, been there a long time. So you're literally seeing the area in a lot of ways as how it was seen back in the 1800s. And they showed pictures and the storytelling that I would highly recommend, um, because it was very informative and it was entertaining. And the weather was nice. So it was fine to walk around.
Well, that knowing me, like I love everything was serial killer triggered, linked to, all those shows. I'm all about documentary and things like that to
Hmm.
understand really the why people became what they became, and of course, Jack the Ripper is phenomenal. I saw I mean, phenomenal. We know what I mean by that, but
Yeah.
I saw the documentary and read everything I need to know about it. So it's definitely something. Next time I go to London, I think that we're gonna make that happen next year. I want to make sure to go the same tour because I would be fascinated. And you said that they also showed some pictures of the actual crime and things.
Yeah, and
So
in London, one of the first ever crime scene photos was taken off either the last or the second to last murder that Jack the Ripper had done, and that was the first ever quote unquote crime scene photo that they used in
wow.
in England, and he showed it, and it's he warns you. He's like, if you have a weak stomach, look away. But it was really fascinating, and the tour guide was really tremendous. And the neat thing about it, tip only. There was no fee,
Mm,
so you could do it for free. And if you wanted to be a cheapskate, not give
yeah.
him anything. But when he was done, it was so good. I paid more than probably what I would have paid if I just bought a ticket because it was really well
Wow. Well, that's a good recommendation, listeners. I
done.
mean, winners. You listen to this. If you want to travel to London, let us know, and we can definitely make that happen and give you all these little advices. Anything I didn't ask you that you would like to share with the audience about London?
Just a few things. One is obviously their electricity is different, and so
Mm,
make sure you have an adapter so that you can charge your phone. And if you're plugging in a laptop or anything electrical, you need the adapter. You can get them off Amazon; they're very inexpensive. You do also have to flip a switch. So on their outlet, instead of just plugging in, you also have to flip a switch that turns it on as an added safety mechanism. In the winter, if you go, in addition to seeing the window displays at Harrods, right next to the Victoria and Albert Museum, which isn't far from Harrods, they have an ice skating rink, very similar to
hmm.
Rockefeller Center in New York. So if you want to do a little ice skating, very picturesque, especially if it's snowing. The other thing is if you go to Windsor, highly recommend Windsor. I mentioned the Windsor Castle, largest castle in Europe. Phenomenal to see. The Royals live there part time. When the flag is up that they're there. When the flag's there, not down, they're not there. But if you ever want to get a Harry Potter feel, like Diagon Alley, you want to go to Windsor. They got these little shops. There's British flags everywhere. Very picturesque. And also, in addition to that pub I mentioned next to the Long Walk, which was built, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. If you drive from Windsor and you're heading into London, you literally drive by where they signed the Magna Carta. They still have chairs in the grass field where all the
Mm,
I forget what they call them. They're not diplomats or senators, but the lords, I
hmm.
guess you will, and the king signed the Magna Carta in the 1535, which ultimately led to the rule of law versus just the monarchy. And that was actually the foundation for what became eventually our Constitution when America won our
Hmm.
independence. So a lot of history. Um, a place, if you want to look at the Thames, and they have the Eye of London, which is like those big
Hmm.
Ferris wheels, and you want to see Big Ben and everything. Remember when we were in DC and we had that glass kind of rooftop, and you were
Yeah.
walking around seeing DC? There's a place called the Shard, and it's a glass skyscraper, and they have a couple different floors that have restaurants. But if you just want to go for drinks, you can go for drinks. And they have like a Downtown Abbey theme where they have these different drinks named after Downtown Abbey and blah, blah. But you at night, you can walk around and you see the Thames, you can see Big Ben all lit up, the Eye of London lit up, very picturesque. So you can see things like that. I could name a lot more, but obviously I know we got to stay within our time. But London is definitely a city. If you haven't experienced, I would highly recommend it. The last quick fun fact I'll share, one of the more famous theaters in central London is called the Odeon Theater, Odeon. And I was really, I'm a big Star Wars fan. And so when The Last Jedi came out, before I knew it was suck, I was upset because I had a trip to London the week that it was supposed to come out in the US. And I'm like, I want, I get worried about, I don't want to hear spoilers or whatever. I actually bought a ticket and saw it at the Odeon Theater.
Uh-huh. Oh, wow.
And checked it out. And then when I came back home, I took my youngest, who's also a Star Wars fan, to see it. But just London oozes history. There's something for everyone. So again, foodie, history buff, into the Royals, parks, sports, just scenic tours, whatever it is, it really satiates. And I didn't even mention, like, when you're going out into Windsor, which is about 45, 50 minutes from London, there's a bunch of sheep. You see farmland. You think of London, you think big city like you would New York. You're not that far, and there's a bunch of farmland, and you see sheep, and you got horses. Windsor's very known for horses, and the horse shows that they have. So highly, highly recommend checking London, and highly recommend contacting Nick Menard and Associates to make that trip. Because again, if you're unsure about what sort of things you can do, you can customize an agenda to make sure you really have a dream experience in London. You won't be disappointed.
Well, perfect. I think, thank you for sharing your experience with London. Really excited. Maybe one last question when you were talking. I mean, what's the difference kind of pricing compared to here when you look at activities, food, and everything? Is it usually cheaper than when we have here in Florida, at least, or is it something a little bit more pricey?
It kind of depends, because the British pound is worth more than the US dollar. So when I went, it's like a 1.38 exchange rate. So meaning $1 or $1.38 in the US is only equated to £1, British pound. But I think the food is reasonable. So the food is, typically between 6 to 12 British pounds. So for us here dining out, that's like $9 to maybe $16.
Yeah,
so not too bad. I think so you just have to be selective because of the exchange rate. We talked about a few episodes ago, like one of the appeals to Japan right now is the strength of the dollar versus the yen. So your money can go further. In London, typically they go off the British pound, not the euro. It doesn't go quite as far, but things I feel are reasonably priced, but it's not a value destination. Yeah, you're going to have to invest a little bit.
So my recommendation, again, if you want to hit London, don't go just for London unless you want to spend 2 weeks and do everything very peacefully. But otherwise, 5 days, and then you go somewhere else for 5 other days, like Paris, or you want to hit Barcelona, Rome, or something like that, and then fly back so you can experience 2 main cities. That would be an option. But again, contact us and we can definitely help you with your next itinerary planning.
Yeah, no, thank you. And to your point, France isn't that far away. Amsterdam's an hour flight away. I think it was like $49.
Yeah. And Paris is 2 hours away with the train.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. You can do a lot, and I appreciate you letting me chat about my London experience. One of my favorite cities to visit.
Awesome. Thank you, Will.
All right, winners, that'll do it for this Wanderlust Wednesday. Please be sure to subscribe, share, and follow. 2 for the win on your favorite platform. And thanks again to Nick Menard and Associates with Dream Vacations for sponsoring today's episode. Whether it's London or any place in Europe or any other destination, check out Nick Menard and Associates to make your dream vacation become a reality. That'll wrap it up. We will see you next Wednesday, winners. Take care.
Bye, winners.